In today's video, we will be learning about the progressive presidents. First being Theodore.
Not this Theodore, but this Theodore, Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt was a lifelong naturalist who majored in natural history at Harvard and an avid hunter. During his time in office, Roosevelt created the National Forest Service and the Square Deal, which involved the 3 C's.
1. Control of corporations.
Roosevelt believed that the great industrialists of America held too much power and it needed to be curbed. Within 5 months of being in office, Roosevelt took on J.P. Morgan head-on. He sealed the deal aimed at helping middle-class citizens and involved attacking plutocracy and bad trust, while at the same time protected businesses from the most extreme demands of organized labor. Ordinary Americans and progressives were highly critical of the power and influence exerted by the ruthless and unethical practices of the robber barons, who headed the big businesses and corporations. These powerful companies accumulated vast profits operating in the economic system of free enterprise and laissez-faire. These massive corporations were largely free of state control of federal regulations. Roosevelt's progressive ideas and his Square Deal policy in relation to control of the corporation were demonstrated during the anthracite coal strike of 1902, saw President Roosevelt as a mediator during the bitter dispute. Although he had no legal right to intervene, President Roosevelt summoned mine owners and the union to Washington to discuss the situation, advocating conciliation and arbitration. He took the unprecedented action of threatening to seize mines and operate them with federal troops if the mine owners refused to compromise.
2. Consumer protection.
Consumer protection was highly influenced by the 1906 publication of The Jungle by Uptown St. Clair, who was branded as a muckraker by powerful magnates in the food industry. Meat Inspection Act of 1906 banned misleading labels and preservations that contained harmful chemicals. The Pure Food and Drug Act banned impure or falsely labeled food and drugs from being made, sold, and shipped. Roosevelt also served as honorary president of the American School Hygiene Association from 1907 to 1908. And in 1909, he convened the first White House Conference on the Care of Dependent Children.
3. Conservation of natural resources.
By the turn of the century, several things were evident. Forests throughout the country were depleted. Some estimates indicated that only about 20% of the original woodlands remained in 1900s. Much of the nation's farmlands, particularly in the south and east, had been exhausted by overuse and were marginally productive. Extractive industries such as oil, gas, and minerals were proceeding at an unfettered pace. Water rights were increasingly coming under the control of private parties who often operated without concern for flood control or the preservation of natural features. Theodore Roosevelt, a sportsman and naturalist, sided emphatically with the conservationists. Legislative effort was devoted to changing the way America used land, especially in the West. The New Lands Act of 1902 placed the federal government an active role in the areas of water management and reclamation. The president, with the aid and encouragement of Chief Forester Guilford Pritchard, worked to preserve more than 125 million acres, mostly in the West, in the forms of national parks and monuments. Designated 200 million acres as national forests, mineral reservations, and potential water power sites, and added 5 national parks, 18 national monuments to the list of protected lands. In 1908, Roosevelt created the National Conservation Commission to inventory the nation's resources and manage their use more efficiently.
William Taft.
Taft appointed conservatives to several key government posts, which embroiled him in controversy almost immediately. His Secretary of the Interior, Richard A. Ballringer, was accused of colluding with private businesses to release valuable Alaskan coal fields for development. Taft's refusal to fire Ballinger and his firm position against Gifford Hitchcock, head of the Forest Service, forever alienated him from Roosevelt's supporters. Taft also betrayed a platform pledge by going along with the Payne-Aldrich Act, which not only failed to substantially reduce duties as progressives had promised, but actually raised several of them. An outraged Roosevelt challenged Taft for the Republican nomination in 1912, and though Taft won the primary, in the general election he received an even smaller percentage of the popular vote than Roosevelt, who ran as a third-party candidate.
Woodrow Wilson.
Woodrow Wilson's 1912 platform for change was called the New Freedom. The New Freedom sought to achieve this vision by attacking what Wilson called the triple wall of privilege: the tariff, the banks, and the trust. The gold standard still made currency too tight, and laws were too expensive for the average American. Wilson signed the Federal Reserve Act, which made the nation's currency more flexible. Unlike Roosevelt, Wilson did not distinguish between good trust and bad trust. Any trust by virtue of its large size was bad in Wilson's eyes. The Clayton Antitrust Act of 1914 clarified the Sherman Act by specifically naming certain business tactics illegal. This same act also exempted labor unions from antitrust suits and declared strikes, boycotts, and peaceful picketing perfectly legal.
In today's lesson, we learned about Theodore Roosevelt's Square Deal, consisting of the 3 C's. First, control of corporations. Second, consumer protection. And third, conservation of natural resources. In Taft, we learned about how he had more trustbusters than Roosevelt. In Wilson's New Freedom, he attacked the triple wall of privilege.